All right, everybody. Well, welcome to today's webinar, The Future of B2B Commerce. My name is Marie Strom. I'm the VP of Strategy and Global Field Marketing here at Fabric, and I'm going to be your host and moderator today. Before we get started, just some quick housekeeping. Again, as always, if you have any questions or technical difficulties, just go ahead and send us a direct message in the chat, and my team will be here to help you right away. And then also we're going to do Q&A at the end of this panel. So go ahead and enter your questions in the chat, and we'll be collecting those at the end, and we will have a chance to answer them with our guests. So today we are joined by Ryan Bartley, Chief Strategy Officer and co-founder at Fabric, as well as Jack Miller, co-founder and COO of Button. And I'm going to introduce them in a second, but I just wanted to do some context setting for today's panel. As you guys know, the managing a B2B supply chain is really challenging. Product exchanges many hands before it reaches a destination. And I think during this global pandemic, we've seen a lot of the challenges that have been presented by a lot of these outdated archaic systems. Still, a lot of these processes are still dependent on faxing forms, which who does that today? And that definitely does not lend itself to speed when it comes to supply chain. And with this situation, Button definitely saw the challenges of medical organizations and jumped in to create a B2B e-commerce experience with a variety of high quality medical supplies, saving customers on average of up to 40% while providing a much better ordering and shipping experience for themselves and also for their customers. And so their vision today, and I think in the future, is to revolutionize the way people access these critical medical supplies. And to achieve this vision, Button needed to rapidly launch, operate, and scale a very curated dropship program. And they were looking for a solution that could easily grow with their business and that simplified the vendor onboarding and scale their vendor and SKU assortment effectively. And so in today's panel, we're going to learn more about Button's transformation journey. And through this case study that that Jack will present today. And our objective for today's panel is really to have an open discussion and also to enable all of you out there who've joined to answer any questions or ask any questions, and to really equip you with the tools and some ideas to get started. So I'd love to go ahead and welcome you to our panelist speakers, Ryan Bartley, as well as Jack Miller. Ryan, would you go ahead and take some time to introduce yourself first?
Sure, thanks, Marie, and excited to be here. My name's Ryan. I'm co-founder of Fabric. My career has largely focused on e-commerce and at very large and scaled brands. My background is from Dell, eBay Global Marketplace, and then Staples, where we helped launch and build a $12 billion B2B platform for the Staples marketplace and company. And so with that, I started Fabric because essentially what I saw was a tremendous gap and need in the market. I, as an operator of those large businesses, realized that the tool sets that we were using were just frankly too archaic and too slow for the pace of what business was, for the pace of what was happening at businesses. And so we launched Fabric to really support companies, B2B companies, with their digital transformation and digital growth to continue to better serve customers.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. And Jack, did you want to take some time to introduce yourself as well before we get started?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, first and foremost, just want to say thank you, Marie, and thank you to the entire Fabric team for having me. Very, very excited to be here. But my name is Jack Miller. I am the COO and co-founder at Button. My background has largely been in software engineering and data. I came from a very large data company prior to working on Button. However, my co-founder and I, were exposed to the medical supply market and essentially saw what was an entirely underserved area of a very, very crucial need for the world, especially during these times. So we decided to found Button with the goal of just reducing cost of healthcare for all. And the way in which we've done that is created a B2B marketplace that's connecting distributors to customers directly. And so we're essentially, like Marie said, taking a very antiquated, very old process that lacks thought, and we're digitizing it and bringing it into the 21st century.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that. Thanks for your introductions, guys. We're going to go ahead and get started with our panel discussion. I'm going to start with you, Jack. So I'm sure you get this question a lot. How did you come up with the idea of Button? What's the story behind, and then also, what's the story behind choosing the name?
Sure. So that is a very good question. The second one we do get quite a lot. So the first answer is, my co-founder and I, we were both working for very large software companies and very used to a certain degree of operational excellence. When you kind of come from a large software industry, you're always pushing the ball forward on, how efficiently things can get done. However, we joined another startup that was focused on deploying technology that would get more medical supply to more people more easily. However, while we were working with that startup, we were essentially exposed to what the medical supply market is like. And when I say we feel like we opened Pandora's box, like, I'm not kidding. Like, we saw what was going on in this industry that I think each and every one of us would agree is just vital to the health of the world. And we could not believe the inefficiency that we were seeing. We could not believe how, outdated it was. And, once we saw that, we couldn't unsee it. And so my co-founder and I decided to, start Button with the sole goal of reducing the cost of healthcare for all. And in doing so, we, tackled the $350 billion market and said, we're going to take this from the age of fax machines and manual POs and invoices, and we're going to bring this to a digital platform. We did that for a couple of reasons, but one of those is that as we go forward, I don't know how to send a fax. I've never sent a fax in my life, and future generations aren't going to either. So we saw a huge opportunity, but also just a huge need for this vital industry to adapt. That being said, the way we came up with the name for Button is, I was driving down the road with my dad, actually, of all people, one day, and JT and I had been banging our head against the wall trying to come up with a name for this new venture. And we knew we wanted it to be a marketplace. We knew we wanted to deal in commerce. And so I was posing this question to my dad, and he goes, well, have you ever heard of the Buttonwood Agreement? I was like, no. He said, Buttonwood Agreement is essentially this agreement that a bunch of Dutch traders signed under a buttonwood tree in New York City to establish the New York Stock Exchange. And JT and I just thought that was the coolest thing ever. And granted, full transparency, totally made up story. It didn't happen, but we loved the made up story. And then, obviously being tech entrepreneurs, we had to take it a step further and remove all the vowels and shorten it down to just Button. So that's where we are today.
It's a great story. I love it. Another question for you, Jack, is as a co-founder, what is your, I think you've already leaned into this a little bit, but what is your vision for the company, for Button?
Sure. So, I think there are two answers to this question. The first one is that, our sole goal is to modernize this antiquated and outdated industry. It is so vital for the well-being of a nation and the world just for these prices to go down. I don't think you'll meet anybody who goes to the hospital and is happy about the bill they get. But what we've realized is that oftentimes that is unfairly put upon the doctor or, unfairly put upon the, hospital itself. But the crazy thing that we notice is people rarely ever check the itemized receipt for what they're getting charged for when they go to the hospital. And you would be astounded by how much of what you pay for when you go to the hospital is actually the supplies that get used while you're there. So when we saw that, we said, well, we can do a better job with this. Not only can we do a better job in terms of saving people money, but we can make this more digital, more easy. And we can make it so that it, works for a future generation of people who are going to need to take over these positions as time goes on. That's the very altruistic mission-based answer. My very selfish-based answer is that we think we have the opportunity with a Button to really take the B2B marketplace and, put our stamp on it. we think B2B is so interesting because, the phrase B2B marketplace sounds like something that everyone would be like, yeah, that exists. But in our research, it doesn't really. Nobody has done it correctly, at least. And so, when posed with this massive problem of getting to, sort of create or at least help establish what it means to be a B2B marketplace, that's just such an exciting problem that, I would have a hard time staying away from. So, that to me is kind of what I think the future of Button can be is, a company that helps get to establish what it means to be a B2B marketplace, all while reducing the cost of healthcare.
That's great. Tell me a little bit about the business factors that led you to look for a commerce platform based off of what your requirements are, and then also why you chose Fabric.
Sure. So, when JT and I started the company, we knew we just needed to get to the market as quickly as possible. We didn't want to spend months and months developing a product just to release it and then realize there were tons of problems with that product. So we, like thousands of other people, went with the very, very well-known name brand e-commerce players. And, it worked pretty well for a couple months. It was a very, very standard, not customized at all e-commerce solution that we were using, and it did okay. And then, 4 or 5 months went. Sorry.
Can you mention who? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Can you mention who it was?
Absolutely, yeah. So we started with Shopify. So, I think when you kind of get into the e-commerce space, like Shopify was like, oh yeah, that's sort of what you use. And so we were on Shopify for 4 or 5 months before we kind of hit this growth stage where we realized we needed something more. So, we took the next step further and we signed a contract for the Shopify Plus. We're like, okay, we're paying good money for this now. We better, get everything it is that we could want under the sun. And that was okay for about a month. And then the exact same thing happened. And we hit this phase. We're like, oh my God, we're outgrowing this. And we quickly realized that it wasn't necessarily that, it was lacking features or, this, that, the other thing. It was that they were trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. They were trying to say, hey, you can be like a B2C company, when in reality, we're not. We're a B2B company. And so it was around that time that we realized we needed something that was much more customizable, much more flexible, and much more attuned to what it is that we're specifically trying to accomplish day to day. And so, at that point, we were kind of posed with the decision, like, all right, do we, slog it out and try to compromise on what we believe is going to make our B2B marketplace experience the best? Or do we really make that commitment of, time, resources, and money to, develop everything from the very ground up? And, we would go around and tell people like what it is we want to do, and, go to Salesforce, or we go to Magento, or we go to Shopify.
Oh no, we got to pause. I think we lost him.
But
You're back.
oh, okay, excellent. Apologies.
We lost you just for a minute. So you said you went to Salesforce, you went to Magento, you went to Shopify, and then you paused. It's okay.
Yeah, apologies about that. Yeah, so we went to all these name brand commerce players, and they essentially just like made the argument to us that no, you can fit into a B2C model, when in reality we knew we couldn't. And they essentially were asking us to compromise on what it is that we knew was going to make our platform the best. And so we really just leaned to the place of, okay, we're going to have to build everything from scratch ourselves, like, go at this alone. Fortunately, that was about the time that we met the folks from Fabric. And what we loved about Fabric was not only did you folks not ask us to compromise on anything, you said, okay, you want to do that? Great. What else do you want to do? Okay, cool. We know how to do that as well. And not only that was, we weren't being trapped into a box either. You folks said, hey, we respect that flexibility. We respect that B2B marketplaces are complex and need a degree of customization. And yeah, that's what led us to Fabric.
That's great. Thanks for that. Next question is for Ryan. Now you get to talk. So what are the, you've been in this space for a long time, both B2C and B2B. I think that you've got a lot of an interesting point of view to share, as pertains to Button and also B2B. So what are the common trends that you think could potentially revolutionize B2B e-commerce today and into the future?
Yeah, what the great thing about commerce is it's never static. And, we at Fabric always think about the customer first, our customers being, companies like Button, to companies that are already established and, want to transform or change their business to become more digital. And so every day I get the luxury and liberty to, talk with a lot of folks in the industry about what they're seeing and what they need. And ultimately they're serving a customer, and that customer is not static. And so the expectations of their customers continue to grow every single day. And in the B2B space, we've seen, as I think Jack and team did, is, it's largely been a very similar model in terms of distribution. And that distribution has largely been focused on sales reps and sales teams that are going out and, serving your customers on a daily basis. And we just think that there's a new model where the software should work very closely with the sales organizations, such that you can expand your reach and do the things that your sales teams can do better. Meanwhile, e-commerce can then solve for the things that, frankly, your team can't do, like be available 24/7, be available internationally, be available with deep content that, is personalized to your experience, versus letting your sales team then do the things that they can do, like provide a high service level, provide the in-depth knowledge and information that's needed to serve your customers. And so for us, the kind of macro view is now these tools exist in the market, with the help of Fabric, where you can have the flexibility you need to serve the customer in the way that you want to, and do it in a much broader scale with, a digital go-to-market. So with that, we see a bunch of kind of pressure coming in from all sides, starting with the customer and the customer expectation, right? Your customers in the B2B realm are consumers at home, and they're used to now through COVID, a consumer-like experience. However, your business, as Jack mentioned, has a lot of complexity built.
Uh-oh.
I think we're having some technical difficulties in both locations here. See if I'll come back. All right, I think he is on pause here. So this is a new one for me. Oh, maybe he's coming back. You're on mute.
Sorry, I'm back.
It's the beauty of a panel, though. This is an open conversation. So we lost you towards the end.
Well, just to summarize, my thoughts is the B2B customer is really, changing and having higher expectations of service level, being available 24/7, having all of the information at their fingertips. And so we feel like, the companies that will stand out, like Button, are the ones that are really embracing and changing with the expectations of the customer. And with that, you need a good foundation to do that. And at Fabric, we think we built that right foundation to give you the flexibility you need.
Great. And Ryan, I know that we talk a lot about this internally at Fabric, and the opportunity on the B2B side, but what, for you in particular, what motivates you to keep working on these B2B industry problems? I know you've seen a lot of this, especially in your days at Staples. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, for us, we've seen very scaled B2B e-commerce, right? managing billions of dollars of value flowing and trading between different constituents. And the problem space is very difficult to crack, right? You have customers who you have specific contracts, specific pricing, negotiated pricing, workflows, you name it. And so it can get very, very complex in terms of your business policies and your structure. And at Fabric, really what we wanted to do is just enable you to run your business as you need to, right? To be able to serve your customer in the ways that you need to. And so with that, we get to work on the digital tools and providing the flexibility in those tools. But also, as we think forward about Fabric, it's really about providing what only companies have that are large marketplaces with billions of dollars of R&D, right? The Amazons and Alibabas of the world. And you should have those same kind of tools that are highly flexible and also really intelligent. So you can have the same level of kind of leveling the playing field as you're building your unique business models. I mean, Button is a unique business model that's attacking a giant industry, right? I think, Jack, you said $350 billion of spends. And how are you going to do that? Well, you have to build differentiation into that business model and serve your customers. And so that's why I think, we get the team at Fabric gets excited every day to come to work to help solve those kind of problems.
And Ryan, one thing you said that, I really love, and, it's sort of the ethos of Fabric that I love in general is, the expectations for what this industry should be have changed monumentally. Like you said, even though these folks occupy, positions in a business, they are consumers themselves when they go home. And so that expectation trickles into their, brain each and every day. And with those expectations, from our end as Button, or, many of your customers' end, requires flexibility. Like you said, we're in a $350 billion market. There are a lot of unique asks that make up that $350 billion market. And it's our job to meet each and every one of them. And when you're tied into, a monolithic, sort of non-developing platform, that's just not a feasible goal for us to achieve. And so, that flexibility is of paramount importance to us.
Yeah, kind of the level of work that you have to do to tick the boxes to serve your customer is pretty dramatic. I mean, you're in a highly regulated industry, and that alone has, hundreds of requirements, if not thousands of requirements to think through and work through and really simplify to modernize that experience. So appreciate the hard work you guys got to do too. And, we think hopefully we gave the right set of tools to help out on that journey.
Absolutely.
Jack, what about you? What keeps you as an entrepreneur motivated to invest your time in this space, especially into solving the medical supply industry problem?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think I've touched on it a number of times here, but just that mission of being able to, reduce the cost of healthcare for all. That is so important for the well-being of everybody and, throughout the world. And, like I said earlier, when I sort of, uncovered what was going on in this market, I truly couldn't believe it. And so for me, there's still that sense of, sort of dumbfounded surprise that, there is a massive problem here for our team to solve. And thank God we've got a lot of very smart people on our team, because it, is going to take a long, long time and a lot of hard work for us to do it. But, if that comes off as something that is daunting or bad, I don't mean it that way. I mean it, that's just a very, very exciting thing for me. Ryan mentioned earlier that, he comes from a long tech background as an operator, and, I identify with that. And so I see, big problems and, big areas of improvement as something exciting. And I know everyone on our team does as well. Additionally, like I said earlier, just that ability to, let this be the spark for what a B2B marketplace could be. Off the top of my mind, I can think of probably 10 to 15 other industries very similar to ours that are, integral, but maybe they're not sexy, maybe they're not
Yeah.
enterprise software. Maybe people just aren't thinking about them on a day-to-day basis. But at some point, those 18-year-olds who have been using phones since they were, months old, they're going to have to occupy roles in those industries as well. And so I think that, there's going to be a long string of events that happen throughout the world, and especially in the B2B marketplace, where these industries are going to have to be modernized in some capacity or another. And, what motivates me is the idea that, Button can be the poster child for how to do that. Button can be the playbook for, hey, let's take this industry that is integral, but maybe it hasn't gotten the attention it deserves. And let's transform it into something great.
Yeah, and that's great, Jack. I think, at Fabric, we think about the ultimate end state is the entire economy is online. And, I don't see a world where there's going to be a singular company that supports all of the different kind of nuances and needs of all the categories that have to come online. And to be able to specialize and build a marketplace or build a platform that supports those verticals, we think there's going to be thousands of marketplaces that have tremendous opportunities. And being able to enable that, we get excited to wake up in the morning. But certainly, I think there's, as you mentioned, there's multiple industries that you can just take a look at and say, hey, this, there's something wrong with this thing. People need to rethink it and build something better. So I love that entrepreneurial spirit of really going and figuring it out and, solving some really important problems.
Absolutely. No, and it is very it's very gratifying just to solve hard problems and hear feedback from our customers when they're like, hey, this is unlike anything we've ever used before. And it's sort of mind-boggling, because you do think like, well, don't you buy things off of Amazon? Don't you have this ability in other parts of your lives, but like you, for whatever reason, put up with this inefficiency in your business life. And so it's very gratifying to get to solve hard problems like that. But you need people who are willing to believe in the dream as well. People who are willing to see the world the way you do. And that's why we appreciate Fabric, because I can honestly say you folks were the first people we talked to who were like, you're not crazy. That is a reasonable thing to want to do. We're not going to try to change what your and your team's vision is.
I love that. Jack, just really quick, with your current journey, any challenges that you faced along the way to date, anything that you can share that's getting in the way of your success, and how are you guys overcoming that? What are you doing to solve for that?
Sure. So I think one of the main challenges we have faced throughout the course of Button is, and it does have a positive spin to it as well, but we started with a very, very big goal in mind. When we started the company, we decided to go attack a $350 billion market. That is just a massive, massive bite to take into anything. And while I'm very, very happy we started, with that massive goal in mind, we quickly realized that what we're doing and what we're trying to accomplish right now, it maybe isn't necessarily applicable to certain part of that market as well as it is to other parts of that market. And so, one thing we did a lot in the beginning is, whether you were part of the largest hospital system in the United States or you were the, dentist down the street, we spent as much time focusing on each of those. What we realized though is, what we're trying to do at Button is much more well attuned to those smaller transactions of people who have been left out of the current medical supply procurement system. So those folks who can't write, $15 million checks on any given day. And, maybe they do only have 3 folks working at their, dental office or chiropractic office, but shouldn't have to, purchase at retail prices on Amazon. They should still be able to purchase at wholesale prices. So, what we've done recently is, gone from that $350 billion market that encompasses just about everything and brought that down to just a meager $110 billion market that encompasses sort of those more acute care, smaller clinics that didn't necessarily fit the mold of how the incumbents to our space wanted medical supply procurement to work.
I love that, Jack, too. I think what you can do, with that model is obviously start to build network effects where, the whole group of folks that are going to come onto your platform to procure, you'll be able to offer them the benefits of the network and being part of Button. So with that, you actually give them the same power as those kind of large incumbents. I think that's a great story.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Jack, any advice, as we're closing out here, you have for other B2B companies that are trying to do the same thing, trying to have this broad vision, this big vision as yourself and as Button? How do they get started?
Yeah, I think, just off the top of my head, one thing I would say is, find great partners, people who will support you in your journey and, will try to, help you at every turn. We're lucky to have Fabric. But, kind of in that same vein, though, is like, it's hard to change a market, especially for a lot of these markets that are just so, this is the way it's been done, it can't change. This is the way it'll always be done. And so in order to change those markets, you have to be uncompromising in what your vision is going to be. You have to be very, very dedicated to what it is trying to do. When you do
Oh no.
type
The joys of the internet.
I know. Do we still have you, Jack? All right, we'll let him come back. Ryan, I would love your point of view on this as well as, what are some of what advice would you give B2B companies who are looking to transition, to come, into the digital fold?
Yeah, I think, if you take a step back and think about where you're at within your life cycle of digital maturity, it can be very daunting, to say like, hey, we need to change. And what I think you can do is start with really what you think is the most modern business model and approach that you can take to expand your business. So really focus on your business strategy first before you think about tools like, companies like Fabric that have capabilities in software. Once you've really, thought through how are you going to transform your business, and that may be a business model like a marketplace like Jack and team have built. It may be a different distribution method that you want to have. It could be multiple things, how you position your products and services in the market, whatever that may be, do that work first, right? And that just requires, thinking, and, there's plenty of great partners within the ecosystem that offer those kind of services. Once you've done that, then really on the software side where, Fabric comes into play is start small and start in a unique place. So focus or find either your biggest area of opportunity or your biggest constraint, and start to modernize your stack there. So you don't have to go through this long, arduous re-platform that you try to boil the ocean. Today, now with modular and composable software, you can just pick a piece and you can change. As Jack mentioned, they were on a tool that really is, a beautiful tool for small businesses that have pretty specific or simple needs. However, as you transition, as you grow as a company, you can start to take those parts and pieces that make up Fabric and start to transition out of them. So I would just say, focus on business strategy, nail that, get conviction in that, and then start small from a software perspective to iterate over time, as opposed to, wait for months or years to really rethink your software stack.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, that's similar to when we talk about this all the time in, other events is it's this essentially what you're wrapping up is, this is Fabric's playbook. This is our, getting started with headless commerce and, and really looking at the entire journey, right? The entire commerce journey first. Well, it starts with the business strategy, like what's your strategy, but then looking at that entire commerce journey, and then identifying where your biggest problem areas, where there's opportunity for growth and starting there. So,
Yeah,
and for the
and that's like kind of how we architected the software. And it's, I think just the modern way of software is really giving those building blocks so you can pick and choose and you can configure them in the way you need to. So it's not this like, one size fits all model. It's pick the parts that work and,
right.
go to town with it.
Right. I don't know if Jack's coming back, so we'll wait. But this is still a good conversation. Why don't we've got some questions from the audience here. I'm going to start with you, Ryan. So B2B sales teams, how can they leverage e-commerce?
Yeah, I mean, it's, the large majority of established companies that we work with in the B2B space have sales teams, and that's their kind of distribution mode. And the way I think about it is the digital capabilities that you can bring to bear really are at service of your customer. And so think about where your sales team and your salespeople actually add tremendous amount of value, and where can self-service e-commerce add value, right? And so as a sales team, instead of becoming the order taker and managing kind of the day-to-day replenishment or procurement, let the site do that, and have your sales team train your customers to procure self-service. Now, your sales team then can do two things really well, more than any digital experience can. They can offer a high service level, so they have subject matter expertise in your products and services, and they should be educating your customers. And the second thing is, now that you've taken away that whole body of work around just the ongoing replenishment or procurement, they can actually go out and do what your sales team should be doing, hunting and selling to new customers and educating new customers, as opposed to just kind of being the order processor in the company. So I think of those as really a symbiotic relationship between the e-commerce software doing its job and the sales team then doubling down on what they do best.
Makes sense. Jack, you're back. Hi. So no worries. So we decided to go into Q&A. So we've got some questions from the audience. One for you, I think, is what has been the biggest learning curve for Button? I think you touched upon some of this, but wanted to see if you could zero in on a couple areas or one in particular.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there are so many, but I think one thing that we have had to come to terms with as well is that things will always be changing. Hitting a moving target is just the name of the game. And so it kind of comes back to what we were talking about earlier, like that ability to be flexible and that ability to adapt very, very rapidly is just integral to being a successful entrepreneur and, having a successful company. And so, if you're interested in that life of knowing exactly what you're going to be doing every day for the next year, then I don't think entrepreneurship is probably the right course. But what our team has come to terms with is that it's all for the better of what it is that we're trying to accomplish and the betterment of our customers. Because we would be lying bold-faced if we said that we know exactly what it is that our customers want at any given moment. We're learning every day, just like everyone else. And so being adaptable and being flexible and being okay with that ability to kind of hit that moving target, that's been a big learning curve and realization for us.
If you had to start all over again, like what would you do? Is there anything you do differently?
I mean, I certainly would not have started with Shopify, if I'm allowed to say that. But I think I would have, probably gone to our smaller, cohorts sooner. I wouldn't have tried to boil the ocean, as I dropped in on Ryan saying here. And I would have, gone to a smaller cohort of customers where we knew we could make a large difference and, kind of begin this evangelization process of what it is that we're trying to accomplish. But, again, to kind of what my piece of advice was, find those people who truly want to partner with you. Find the people who believe in the goals that you have and what your mission statement is. And, there are going to be a lot of folks out there who, say, okay, well, this is a sale that we can put on the books for the end of the month or this, that, the other thing. But truly the people that'll be helpful are the people who believe in what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. So if I could go back, I would probably set that as my standard before deciding to establish any partnerships.
Got it. And then with your partnership with Fabric, how did you decide to measure the success of it? What are the improvements you're expecting from implementation?
Yeah. So originally, our scope of what success meant with Fabric was very, very small. We knew that we had a process that was very, very manual and that it was taking up a lot of resources and a lot of time for a lot of people on our team. And we thought, if we could free up that time and get those resources back and automate this process, that would be a very, very successful, partnership and be a very, very successful, experience to work with Fabric on. But, that's drastically changed even for me these days. What I think a successful partnership with Fabric is these days is really bringing to fruition and reality sort of that vision I said of like, hey, how do we create a playbook for taking these antiquated old marketplaces that have not been given the thought they deserve, and how do we be the leaders in that industry? Because I know for certain that's something my team thinks about each and every day, and I know that you folks at Fabric are thinking about that as well. And so I think partner together, there are a lot of great things that we can do. So I think that's probably my new barometer for success.
Very cool. Another question that came up, this one is a follow-up to you, Ryan. What about B2B sales team that have customer care and order management already within an org, but struggle to transition from a traditional commerce to e-commerce?
Yeah, I mean, the role of a sales team, that you wear many hats because you're the kind of the first line of customer interaction and probably the best line of customer interaction. And so what I think you can do is really start to train your customers on the best modes of interacting with you, right? Where are they getting the most leverage from you as a sales team? And teaching them where they can kind of get leverage from being self-service. So you have to make sure that you configure the tools for like where you're at today within your journey, right? If you're serving your customer and you're doing that work on their behalf, great. You become an actor in the platform, and you can plan that role and those permissions to be able to continue to serve the customer today. And then over time, as you start to transition them to those self-service capabilities, then you can back off that and have that flexibility to do it. So you kind of got to meet your customer where you're at today, and then thinking, as I mentioned, thinking about evolving that user experience is really, really important. As Jack mentioned, every day you're going to learn something, and every day your customer is going to expect more, and so it's more important to be able to change really quickly and test new ideas and new things to keep helping them out. So with that, you just need a bunch of flexibility and a bunch of a learning culture as well too within your organization.
Absolutely. Well, I think that concludes our questions today, and we're actually at time. So I just want to say thanks, Ryan and Jack, for your time today. I think, this has been super informative. Obviously, we've covered a lot. The journey to entrepreneurship is definitely full of challenges. And you guys both articulated that. I think through your story at Button, Jack, we learned that scaling up a business and maintaining this rapid pace of growth is really difficult to do. And so it's really critical that you find the right technology partner. Again, going back to what Ryan said, is identifying your business strategy, but then also finding it and solving for those gaps, but then also finding the right technology partner is going to be really critical to the success of, accelerating your business and getting ahead. So it's super important, especially, when it comes to the changing customer expectations today, whether it's B2B and B2C. And Ryan, and everybody out there and those who know us, thanks, Lyndon. Our mission at Fabric is really to help bridge that economic gap between this high digital maturity and the low digital maturity organizations, and bringing them closer to the future of commerce, one step at a time, or as we like to say, module by module, right? So that companies like Button can drive e-commerce growth faster, and operators like all of you out there are empowered to do your job more efficiently. So anyway, thanks again for everyone's time. Thanks, Jack. Thanks, Ryan. This is a super fun discussion. For those of you online who joined us, thanks again. This is recorded, so we will share the recording after today. So thank you and have a great rest of your day.